Hi, my name is Clara O'Hayen, and I'm a policy researcher at Vocal Europe. Today, we will be discussing the context and details surrounding the recent positive dialogue between the European Union and Turkey, understood through the lens of the decisions taken during the latest EU Council meeting that took place on the 25th of March 2021. During this Council meeting, EU leaders met in Brussels to discuss key issues such as Russia, Syria, China, the Middle East, NATO, refugees, and human rights. Unsurprisingly, Turkey finds itself at the center of these issues, both as a problem, but also as part of the solution. Following this Council meeting, the European Council President Charles Michel and the European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen announced that they will pay a visit to Ankara on the 6th of April 2021, tomorrow. To help us make sense of the Council meeting's conclusions and the recent positive engagement between Brussels and Ankara, I am delighted to be joined by Ebubekir ISIK, who is Research Director at Vocal Europe. And I will directly kick off this interview with my first question. Could you share your overall take on the latest Council meeting and what it means for EU-Turkey relations?
Hi, Clara. Thank you, first of all, for having me. Before taking stock of what was announced in the Council conclusions, I think it's important to underline that the kind of dual approach that the EU applies this time to Turkey is worth mentioning, and therefore I have a couple of points, in fact 3 points to make here. First, I think this dual approach is very transactional. In other words, if things go well, there will be economic cooperation, high-level dialogue, people-to-people contact, and etc. If Turkey goes back to renewed provocations and unilateral actions, particularly in Eastern Mediterranean, there will be restrictive measures. Considering the EU-Turkey relations, particularly over the past decade, one might say that there has not been such a pragmatic / transactional approach from the EU side to tackle Turkey. And I think second, when we look at the Council conclusions on Turkey, one can clearly see that the tone towards Erdogan administration is very softened, where a positive agenda, further financial support for refugees are pledged, and sanctions are not mentioned at all. However, we can see, on the other hand, that the EU has drafted really a very detailed and careful approach with a lot of conditions and restrictive measures, I would say, if things do not proceed as Brussels expected. Finally, maybe the third, over the past years, we have seen that the main measure that the EU has been instrumentalizing against Turkey was that it did not really open new chapters in Turkey's accession process. This was in a way to respond to Turkey's backsliding steps in domestic politics and some of its unilateral actions in foreign policy front. However, with the new dual approach, I think the EU reserved some restrictive measures in its toolbox to the extent that it might this time threaten a Turkish economy in case Turkey reverses its current positive attitude. I think this is a typical way of dealing with third countries by the European Union.
Looking at the Council's conclusions, what are the EU's priority issues?
When looked at the Council conclusions, one can, I think, identify two key issues, apart from the issues of rule of law, human rights, democracy, which are set to be added to the conclusions at the last minute. To me, the first priority issue for the EU is certainly cooperation on irregular migration, which is kind of decoupled from the other issues mentioned in the Council conclusions. As you know, EU-Turkey refugee deal was signed back in 2016 for 5 years, and this term has expired. And we know that the European Union is willing to renew this deal, which is one of the reasons why Council and Commission presidents are to pay a visit tomorrow to Ankara to meet President Erdogan. In that respect, the Commission has been, I think, already requested to come up with some plans to further financially support at least 3.6 million refugees in Turkey. The second priority issue is, I think, Eastern Mediterranean, which has, to me, three different dimensions. First, although the Greek-Turkish relationship and the long-standing issue of reunification of Cyprus are mentioned in the Council conclusions, I think the major concern that the EU leaders have is about the tension in Eastern Mediterranean concerning Turkey's violations in exclusive economic zones of Greece and Cyprus, of course, according to the European Union. And in that respect, we have seen that Turkish Navy, for instance, blocked research vessels of Italy, Norway, Israel from entering Greek exclusive economic zones. And of course, this is according to the European Union. And I think another priority issue for the EU within the framework of Eastern Mediterranean is that the EU leaders certainly oppose Erdogan administration in questioning the status of some of the Greek islands in Aegean, which has become a key issue between the both countries. On top of that, I think many are aware that EU leaders have been already expressing their concerns regarding the deal signed between Ankara and the Government of National Accord in Tripoli, Libya, which the EU claims that this deal violates the rights of Greece and Egypt. And this is, I think, well echoed in the Council conclusions as well.
Considering all the issues of interest you mentioned, what is the political context within which the EU leaders will visit Ankara tomorrow on the 6th of April?
I think in a way, the EU is really obliged to pursue its engagements with Turkey within a three-layered, I would say, approach that is essential when considering the current nature of EU-Turkey relations. First of all, Turkey, there's no doubt that Turkey is officially still an accession country, despite all the backsliding steps regarding rule of law, human rights, democracy. The accession process is officially out there. Neither Turkey nor the European Union has publicly announced that they want to end this process officially. And secondly, there is a process of cooperation between the EU and Turkey, particularly, I think, in curbing the migration and deepening of economic ties. This is an approach that has become more transactional, I would say, particularly following the EU-Turkey refugee deal since 2016. And I think third layer is that there's also a process of containment of Turkey by the European Union due to Turkey's some of unilateral actions jeopardizing EU in its immediate neighborhood. I think these three essential approaches stemming from the current nature of EU-Turkey relations put the EU leaders in a very difficult position to formulate a solid approach towards Turkey, since there are, as you can imagine, different European actors with different interests and concerns at each of these layers, including, I think, member states, but also the relevant EU institutions.
Could you help us make sense of these competing ideas informing the European response towards Turkey?
The fact is that there have been always competing and I think different opinions in how to tackle with Turkey as a candidate country, as a geopolitical contender that creates troubles, and also as an important NATO ally to cooperate with. When we look at the EU institutions, we can see, I think, this diverging positions very clearly. First of all, when we look at the four larger EU member states at the EU Council, we can see different concerns, but also interests regarding Turkey. For example, Germany, it has two important concerns regarding Turkey. The first one is related to the migration issue, because Germany has become a key migration destination for Syrian refugees since 2016. And I think Turkey has been playing a crucial role in this respect. Second, Germany is traditionally concerned that to a certain extent, the incumbent Turkish government can always have means to mobilize the Turkish diaspora in Germany to influence German foreign policy towards Turkey or in favor of Turkey. Therefore, Germany, as an EU member state, is not traditionally in favor of tough steps against Turkey. Spain is another member state that is, I think, against hard measures towards Turkey, neither, because Spain is particularly concerned about Turkish economy due to the fact that around 50% of the Turkish private sector debt at the moment is carried by Spanish banks. I think the same thing can be said also for Italy, since it was the main European investor in Turkey back in 2019. Whereas France's take on Turkey is rather different compared to the member states that I have just mentioned, because France considers itself as a Mediterranean power that wants to be engaged very much with the policies regarding Mediterranean and also Africa that have security and economic dimension. Therefore, for instance, we have seen tougher reactions from France to Turkey regarding some of Turkey's unilateral actions in Eastern Mediterranean and Libya than the member states than I mentioned. So following the different concerns and interests of the member states at the EU Council, I think it's important to underline that the European Parliament has been traditionally more vocal in EU-Turkey relations, particularly with respect to rule of law, democracy, human rights. As a matter of fact, it requests many times from the EU Council to place these key values at the center of EU's engagement with Turkey. And in fact, the Parliament did publish a press release right before the latest EU Council meeting, underlying that Turkey should be tackled within the accession framework, referring to the previously mentioned principles.
So what's next for the EU-Turkey relation?
Well, I have a couple of points to make here. First, we will have another EU Council in June. In the meantime, the European Commission will be working on how to finance the Syrian refugees in Turkey and how to overcome existing trade irritants for a deepened customs union, so that the Council might consider moving ahead with it. Second, the main debate, I think, will be, however, if the EU can still keep Turkey as a candidate country, which is a debate that has been popping up very frequently over the past decade. In fact, the current cooperation framework between both sides, I think, is very far away from the framework that the EU instrumentalizes for candidate countries. This is very clearly an approach for a third country, not for a candidate country. Third, we have seen over the past several weeks that I think Turkey is reacting to EU's threats of sanctions that might, I think, hurt Turkish economy. Also, we've seen that the EU, I think, is more and more united regarding a concrete policy towards Turkey, because the Europeans are, I think, more united than ever around the idea that it makes no sense any longer to wait for the improvement of Turkish domestic matters, so that EU cooperates with Turkey on key matters of interest.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this insightful exchange. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.